Hey everybody, my name is Deja and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my top books of 2020. So I know that I'm filming and posting this a little bit later than a lot of other people, but I wanted to make sure I did not miss any single book. So I was waiting until the end of 2020. I feel like Booktube has this issue where like they always want to post things as early as possible. Like people do their wrap-ups for the month before the month is even over. You know, like I feel like people just want to post as soon as possible, and I feel like we should all just collectively decide as a group to wait for things to be over before we start posting about them. You know, that's just me.
Not me going on a whole rant less than 30 seconds into the video. It was not necessary. I apologize.
What was the reason? I just explained the reason. What was the reason, bitch?
Also, do you guys like my setup today? I decided to film on the other side of the room because you guys don't really see these bookcases as much anymore. So I decided to go over here. I technically am counting this as 12, but in total it's actually 15. But 2 of them are actually series that I read multiple books from this year. So in total it's 15 books, but in my mind it's like 12. But I did not want to rank these at all because that's going to be too much for my brain. So I just decided to do this in order from like most realistic to fantasies. So I'm going to go nonfiction, horror, thrillers, romance, fantasy romance, and then fantasy. So that's the order that I'm gonna go in, and I'm just really excited. I'll probably put timestamps for all of those down below since I'm mentioning them. So if you want to skip to a specific section, I will have those down below. Also, if my energy is off today, like I'm so tired. Today's the first day back to school for me, and I couldn't sleep because insomnia. So I'm a little bit tired today, but I still wanted to film this so I could actually get it up for you guys, and I will still be having some videos relating to the end of 2020 coming out probably for like the next week or two. And yeah, I'm really excited to just talk about these books because I love them a lot. So the first book that I have on this list, as I said, is nonfiction because I'm going to do nonfiction first, and that is Hood Feminism. And I loved this book so freaking much. Like I literally remember doing the dishes and almost crying. And this book is just about feminism in a non-traditional light, because a lot of feminism is very whitewashed and it's a lot of white women asking for more privileges when a lot of women don't even have basic necessities. Like gun violence is never really seen as a feminist issue, neither is hunger, poverty. Those things are not as talked about within feminism as they should be. And so this book kind of just takes a deep dive into the intersectionality of those things, and this book just really hit me hard, specifically the gun violence section and the domestic abuse section. It just really triggered something within me, and I just think feminism is so kind of limited in its view, and a lot of people don't consider themselves feminist because of that. But I think that feminism just needs to open up to include a wider variety of women that is not seen in mainstream feminism, and this book really just made me think a lot about that specifically, because that's not really something that I necessarily thought of before this book. But ever since I read this book, I constantly think about it almost all the time. And I just think that this book is a really extremely important read that like everybody needs to read. I would say out of every book on this list, the rest of them I feel like are so subjective in like my love for them, but this one I feel like is just something that should be like required reading for everybody. It talks about such important issues that not a lot of people think about. The next book that I have on here is another nonfiction. I don't know where the cover is because this is my mom's, but that is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I did not want to pop up the picture in editing. I hate doing that, but you can see a little bit it's Becoming. Maybe I just will pop up the picture. It's depending on how lazy I feel, but this is Becoming, okay?
With your dusty, crusty, musty ass.
But this book is Michelle Obama's autobiography, and I really did love this book a lot. I loved seeing Michelle Obama's journey, and I feel like I just relate to her in a lot of ways, and especially like how she went to law school, but then she realized she didn't want to be a lawyer and she did something else with her life. And I feel like that's kind of me. It's like I always think that I want to do something and then I do it and then I'm like,
maybe this is not what I want.
You know what? No. Well,
this really gave me hope that in the future, if that's something that I want to do with my career, like that's fine, and it'll be okay if I just need to follow my heart and follow my passion and do what I want to do. And and everything will work out okay. And I really loved seeing specifically like that part before she really became the first lady. That part was really interesting to me. I just really loved learning about Michelle Obama's life because she came from nothing, and she is very much seen as Barack Obama's wife, which she is, but she's so many other things just besides Barack Obama's wife. She's her own individual person, and I think that is something that a lot of first ladies struggle with. I think Michelle Obama is one of the most distinct first ladies where she kind of stands on her own as her own individual person, but a lot of first ladies just fall into the background behind their husbands and they're kind of just seen as the first lady. But Michelle Obama really tried to fight that, and I again love just seeing her life before this, and this was honestly just so stunning. Next, I'm going to be moving on to horror, and I have 2 horror as well, and this one might have a reflection because it's a library book, but that is Into the Drowning Deep by Myra Grant. Actually, it's not that bad as long as I don't do it this way where the light is, but I loved this book so much. It is my all-time favorite horror. I do have another horror on this list, but this one is definitely my all-time favorite horror, and I just love this book so much. When it first started, it was a little bit slow, but then once they got onto the ship, it was amazing. If you don't know what this is about, we basically follow this ship of researchers and journalists who are on it to try and discover if there's mermaids in the Mariana Trench, because I think it was 7 years earlier a similar ship went out to film a documentary to figure out if there's mermaids in the Mariana Trench, and all of them just disappeared off the ship. There was no trace of them. The ship was still there, but no people. And they did find footage of what looks like to be mermaids coming onto the ship. So they send out this second ship 7 years later, and a lot of them have connections. Some of them were sponsors for the first ship. Some of them had siblings and family on the first ship, and I just really love this book a lot. It did not go the way that I expected, and I feel like at the end it left it very open, but at the same time it gave you satisfaction in the ending. I loved how scientific this was, more than I even expected, but it's not in an overwhelming way where you can't understand what's going on. I feel like everything is described enough in detail where you understand it and it makes sense, and it wasn't just unnecessarily thrown in there to be smart or whatever. But we are following a group of scientists mostly, and journalists who are talking to the scientists, so obviously there's going to be a lot of science involved, and they're going to try and figure out what's going on with these mermaids. And this also has deaf representation in it, and if you don't know, I took sign language for a year in school, and I was in my sign language club and everything, and the deaf community is one that really fascinates me, and this also has sign language in it, and it's a big part of the plot, which I really enjoyed. It was one of my favorite aspects of this, and if you're looking for a horror, I would definitely recommend this. I think this is pretty scary, honestly, but if you are not scared of the ocean and you don't plan on going out in the middle of open water, you'll be fine reading this because it's very specific circumstance. I just think this is a really good horror for people to pick up if they want to be scared and learn a little bit about science and marine biology. The next horror that I have is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson, and this is a YA horror which I really enjoyed. This one was definitely more scary to me personally than Into the Drowning Deep. Into the Drowning Deep I think is objectively scarier, but this one, it creeped me out a lot more. We follow our main character Emmanuel, and she lives in a Puritan society, and she's very ostracized from the society because her mother was deemed to be a witch and she was burned at the pyre because she had Emmanuel with someone of a different species, kind of. He's not really different species, but he came out of this like forbidden forest. So Emmanuel's very ostracized in this society, and she gets drawn into this dark forest, the same one that her mother went into, and she's given the diary of her mother, who she obviously really never met because she was burned at the pyre. And so she's given this diary, and she kind of gets wrapped up in this dark adventure and trying to figure out more about the society. And like, this society is very religious, and because it's obviously based on the Puritans, and strong religious societies that are almost cult-like really freak me out and scare me. So that's why this one particularly scared me. Like, organized religion is kind of scary because like it can be very cult-like sometimes. I'm not saying all of them. This one specifically was meant to feel like a cult, and so it definitely accomplished that, and it was really creepy to me. And this does have like a little bit of like a romance in it, which I didn't expect, and I really enjoyed. I really loved Emmanuel's character, and I loved how determined she was despite the society pushing her away every single time. and I really loved the writing in this. I think it was absolutely stunning, and this is actually a debut novel, so I can't wait for Alexis Henderson to come out with more work. So next I'm going to be moving on to thrillers slash mysteries, and the first one that I have is No Exit by Taylor Adams. Everybody loves this book. It is one of Booktube's favorite thrillers, and I think it has good reason to be a favorite because it's also mine.
Calling all the basic bitches. Calling all the basic bitches. There's a new announcement. You're basic.
We follow our main character Darby, who is a college student on her way to go visit her dying mother, and she gets stuck in this blizzard and has to pull off over to a rest stop, and she is stuck there with 4 other people who are also trapped in the blizzard. Like, they literally cannot drive. Like, there's so much snow, it's not possible. And so she goes outside to try and get a cell signal to tell her mom, like, hey, like, I'm not going to be on time because of this, you know, ridiculous snowstorm. And while she's outside, she kind of looks into the people's cars and sees that in a van there is a little girl trapped in a cage. So she has to try and figure out, like, who has this little girl trapped in this cage. And I really don't know what I would do in that situation of being stuck with a kidnapper.
I hate it here. I want to go home.
I feel like this book really is good at building suspense and tension. It doesn't really necessarily start off slow, but it's kind of like Darby trying to, like, figure out, like, be like, oh, like, let me talk to these people, try and figure out who's who has this kid. So it's her trying to kind of investigate the mystery of who has this kid, and you actually kind of figure it out early on, but then the book completely twists on its head, obviously, as thrillers do, and it just really had me shook at these plot twists. I didn't see them coming at all, and it is amazing. Like, I love this thriller. It's one of the only books that ever made me have, like, a physical reaction, as in, like, my heart was pumping. Like, I have never felt my heart race like that from a book before, and I think I really just have to applaud this book for doing that to me. So the next one that I have, you've probably heard me talk about if you've been on my channel for any amount of time. I read this back in June, and I've raved about it since because I feel like it is extremely underrated. Some people have talked about it, but not a lot of people have read it, and then I've convinced people to read it, and everybody gives it 4 or 5 stars. Okay, like, everybody really likes this book, so I feel like it's one that's universally pretty good, and it is YA thriller mystery, so that's why a lot of people don't really want to pick it up, but it is absolutely amazing, and that is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson.
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
I love this book so much, and look at it. Look at the cover. Like, it is...
Bitch, stop talking about the cover. That is not what this video is about.
And in this, we follow our main character, Pip, who's doing a project for her senior year of school. I think this is in England, so it's not high school, but it's basically like her senior year of high school. And she has to do this final project, and you can basically do it on anything. So she decides to do it on this case in her town where everybody in the town believes that this girl was murdered by her boyfriend. There's no way to really confirm whether or not this actually happened, and it's kind of just universally accepted in this town that he did kill her. But Pip doesn't actually believe that, so then she goes on this whole adventure trying to figure out what actually happened, and she goes into the lives of each of the people who are involved to try and figure out who they truly were as a person. And the girl that was murdered in this, she was like the golden girl of the town, and everybody loved her, but then she dug deep into her as a person, and people aren't always what they seem, and people have secrets and dark sides to them. I think this showed that people are really 3D. We have multiple aspects to our lives, and not everybody knows that. So I really just love this book so much, and I think Pip is such an amazing main character, and this is mixed media because she is doing the project. So she does have transcripts and entry logs for her project. So, like, here's an entry log and then the transcript for the interview that she did. And I just love this book so much. Every aspect of this book just was amazing to me. Like, I can't really think of anything wrong with it in general. Like, some of the other ones I could think of, like, reasons why people wouldn't like it, but in this, like, I really can't. It was a good time, and I would really recommend this if you haven't picked it up, and it is not scary at all. Like, I would feel like Into the Drowning Deep and No Exit can be a little bit, like, scary or thrilling depending on what scares you. No Exit, I feel like, that kind of is scary to me, being trapped with a random person who can kill me. The Year of the Witching I feel like isn't scary, it just really gives off creepy vibes. And this one though I feel like is not really scary whatsoever, but it does give off a lot of true crime vibes, and it's very like murder mystery, like trying to investigate and figure out who did what, and I just really loved this book for that. So next I'm going to be going into romance, and I have two for this. Apparently I have two for like each category. And so this one is Hero by Lauren Rowe, and I don't have a copy of this one, but I loved this one. I picked it up on a whim because of Bree from In Love and Words. She recommended this book and I loved it. It is a little bit insta-lovey, so if you don't like that, I feel like you wouldn't like this, but it's more like instant attraction or like being instantly drawn to somebody. This is the first book in the Morgan Brothers series. So it is a series, but each book follows a different brother, so I really need to continue. But in this one, our main male character, he is a firefighter, and he goes into this fire and gets badly like burned, messed up, like he jumps out of a building. So not only is he like kind of burned, he also just like, I think he like broke bones or something wrong with his body, okay? So our main female character, she is a, what is it called?
Oh, there it is. I remembered.
So our main female character is a physical therapist, and she is his physical therapist in the hospital. So she takes care of him and helps to get his body working again. And as soon as he sees her, he's like drugged up and like thinks of her as like an angel that's come into his life. So he very much is instantly attracted to her, but this is kind of forbidden just because obviously like hospital staff is not supposed to have any sort of romantic relations with their patients. So she's kind of like standoffish, being like,
Sir, like we can't do that, not today.
so their real relationship doesn't really start until after he is not her patient anymore, but there is a lot of attraction and tension while they're still like have that patient physical therapist relationship. This does kind of deal with a little bit of darker themes, which is kind of why I like it. Like I feel like fluffy contemporary romances are not really my thing, so that's why I like this one, because it was really fun and fluffy, but it also had some darker elements thrown in as well. So our main female character, her husband was actually cop and killed, so she's a widow and she has 2 kids. And so we see our main character trying to acclimate her kids to this new man in her life, and it's just very interesting. I really like the grief aspects in this. I think they were really realistic. Obviously I've never had a significant other die, but it just seemed really realistic to me, and I just really love this book overall. So thank you, Bree, for the recommendation. The next romance that I have is The Bromance Book Club by Alyssa K. Adams, and this one is more of like a fluffy contemporary romance, but this does have a little bit more of serious topics.
I also read the second book in 2020, but I don't own a physical copy, so I completely forgot about it because I'm dumb. It's definitely a favorite and I love both of them.
So in this we follow our main character Gavin, who is a professional baseball player, and he's having trouble in his marriage. His wife literally kicked him out and she's like, we're about to get a divorce, like I don't want this anymore. So he complains to his friends, obviously, who are trying to help him, and they kind of indoctrinate him into this book club that they have called the Bromance Book Club, and it was existing before him. And in this book club they read romances to try and understand women better so they can, you know, deal with like their girlfriends, fiancés, wives better. And this book club consists mostly of professional sports players and like guys who are like high in political ranking, like really professional guys who are famous basically. And I love this book so much. I loved seeing the perspective of like men trying to understand women. I think it was really funny, but it also deals obviously with the marriage, and we don't really get romances where there's already an established relationship, so I really enjoyed seeing that a lot. And this does have excerpts of the historical romance that Gavin reads that's right here. It wasn't like my favorite necessarily, like I wanted to get back to Gavin, but I did really like those aspects as well because his life was kind of mirroring what was occurring in the romance. If you just want like a nice little cute romance to pick you up, I would definitely recommend this one. So next I'm going to be moving into fantasy romance. I kind of have like 2 fantasy romances and then 2 that are fantasies with a little bit of romance, if that makes sense. But so the first one is definitely fantasy romance, and that is the From Blood and Ash series. I think it's just called the Blood and Ash series, but the first one is obviously From Blood and Ash, and the second one is A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. It's being very washed out, and I loved both of these books. I gave it 5 stars. I know a lot of people said the second book was a lot better, or a lot of people thought that this one was like 3 or 4 stars, while they gave the first one 5 stars, but I loved both of them for different reasons. This series is so good. We follow our main character, Poppy, and she is this person called the Maiden, and she's basically chosen to help these people ascend. And apparently it's a spoiler that they're like vampires, but I don't think it's a spoiler. And there's different kind of species of vampires. If you think of kind of like, you know, like the Vampire Academy series, it's kind of like that, where there's different like levels of being a vampire. Not levels, but there's different types. It's very similar to that, and I love the series so much. It is a little bit slow, I think, at times, which I think a lot of people wouldn't like, but I love these characters so much that it doesn't really matter to me. If I love the characters, it doesn't really matter if the book is slow to me. Like, I could literally watch them like eat eggs and I would be happy. Like, I don't know why I said eat eggs. Like, it could be anything. They could literally just be like walking on a treadmill and I would have a good time, as long as there's conversation and banter. Also, this is like heavy, so that's why I keep like putting it down and putting it back up. And I really like this series. I really love Poppy. I think that she is a great main character because she is so determined, and I love seeing that. She's a very strong female main character. I just really like Poppy, even though in the second book she was so annoying. She had a reason to be annoying, but like to me, I was like,
Okay, Poppy. Okay.
And then Hawk is the love interest in here, and I love him with my whole heart. He's up there with Rhysand. Him and Rhysand are like my #1 book significant others. I don't know what to call them, but I love him so much. He's honestly like so freaking cute, and just he's everything that I want. Like, his banter is on point. Like, he's always pushing Poppy, pushing her buttons, which I love. Like, when the male character is kind of like snarky and sarcastic and like flirts with the main female character and she's not having it, that's like one of my favorite things ever. And I just really love this series. I feel like this is kind of hard to talk about just because the plot in the first book doesn't really pick up until like 200-300 pages in, so it's not in the synopsis at all, so I feel like it's a little bit harder to describe. But I just really love this series, and a lot of people have been hyping it up recently, and it did win the Goodreads best romance, which as it should. And Jennifer L. Armentrout is honestly an icon, a queen, so we love to see it. So the next one that I have is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is actually an art copy, but I buddy read this with a couple people earlier this year, and this book is literally so sweet. Like, out of all of these, this one is just like, it's just so happy, okay? It is honestly just so cute. We follow our main character, Linus, and so he is a caseworker for like kind of almost like the foster care system for magical children in this world, and he gets put on this case to go like check up and look at the orphanage for the most dangerous children in the world. And it's out on this cliff on an island away from society, and this book is just so freaking cute. It has a romance between him and the like leader. No, what is his name? It has a romance between him and Arthur, who is the master of the orphanage, and the children are so cute. The romance is so wholesome, and I just love this because, you know, Linus had a very monotonous life. He had a desk job. He didn't really care about his life. You know, like The Incredibles. And in the beginning, how Bob, you know, he just has his desk job, and he's very much like all the time.
Why is my posture the same as his LMAO?
And he is not happy with his life. That's very much how Linus's life is. He's not unhappy with it like Bob is, but it's very much like, if you think about the colors even for that, like they're very muted, very cold. That's how Linus's life is, and it's really sad. But his life gets changed by this orphanage and these kids really just want to be loved, and society ostracizes them and puts them out on this island, and they can't even go into a town because people fear them and they don't even know them. Like, on the outside they're scary, but on the inside, again, they just want to be loved, and they're still children. So this does kind of have like serious topics like that, like how people are not what they seem and you can't judge a book by its cover. That's kind of really what the themes in this are, but it is just so wholesome and adorable, and I love it so much. So please read this. It is so good. I need to read more of TJ Klune's work, but I'm scared to read Wolfsong because I know it's probably gonna rip my heart out because everybody says it's really emotional. But this book is so cute, so if you just want something to make you happy, please read this. So next up I have House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J Maas, also known as Crescent City. Sorry if you see like this sticking out. My mom is actually currently reading it for a video, so that'll be coming up. but I actually read this twice in 2020. I read it in June and then I read it again in November, and the second time I tabbed it so freaking much, even the top, like, it's crazy how much I tab this. It has so many things in it that I love, and we follow our main character Bryce and her best friend Danica, and I can't really get into the plot because it shifts on its head, but in this world there is so many different creatures. There's literally like fae, werewolves, mermaids, angels, demons, everything. There's so many, and I love this book so much. There's a murder mystery in here, and there's a romance, and so this one is like kind of fantasy romance, kind of just fantasy. Like it's more like fantasy with a romance in it than it is fantasy romance to me. But this book is just everything. Like, Bryce is everything to me. I love her. I feel like a trend that I have here is that I really like strong female heroines who stand on their own, and Bryce is really that. She really put up her walls because she was hurt, and she is very misunderstood. She definitely also gives me Scorpio vibes, so she is a Scorpio. I relate to her because
Scorpio gang, but
she just really put up these walls because she was hurt and she went through trauma, and so she doesn't let people in, and she puts on a face and acts like this party girl so people don't actually truly understand who she is. And I think that that is something that is very powerful. I relate to it a lot, and this has like a lot of friendship talk in here, which is something that I found really amazing because I don't think that friendship is talked enough about in fantasy romance. This has so many strong themes for the power that love can have, and not romantic love, but just love in general, and how strong you can feel for the people in your life. But Bryce is literally just so kick butt, especially at the end. She really just, with the sword, if you know, you know. And Hunt in here I really like, but I've heard a lot of people have theories about it and things, so it's kind of put me off Hunt a little bit. But I do still really love him, and it's the wings for me. Okay, he's an angel, and it's the wings for me. Okay,
stop it, get some help.
But yeah, I just really love this book, and everybody's been hyping it up this year, but I think it's well deserved. And we finally got to the last bit, and that is a series, and there's 4 books out, but I've only read the first 3 in 2020, and that is the An Ember and the Ashes series by Saba Tahir. I know the last book doesn't match. I read the first book back in June and I loved it so much I decided to create a read-along for it called Ember Along, and I do it with a couple of the people. I will link everything down below, even though we're on the last book. But if you guys read the last book recently, just because it came out in December, and you want to watch the live show and discuss with us, you definitely can, because it should be going out before that live show. So I will definitely link everything down below if you want to talk to us about A Sky Beyond the Storm. But I read this back in June and I loved it so much, so I created the read-along, and I reread this in September. Subsequently read the other 2 books in the series, and we were supposed to read A Sky Beyond the Storm in December, but we got pushed back to January being the live show, so I pushed reading it back to January as well. So I did read these 3, and I will rank these for you guys actually. So my least favorite is A Torch Against the Night. It's my least favorite. Then I believe it's Reaper at the Gates, and then An Ember and the Ashes at the very top. I kind of debate between these 2 a lot because the third one had me shook to the core, but the first one I really love because it has a trials element and it is at an academy, so those are both things that I really love. But I never even talked about what the series is about. So we follow our main characters Laia and Elias, and Laia's basically whole family was killed by the Empire except her brother, and so at the very beginning of this you see her grandparents get killed and her brother gets taken by the Empire. So she goes to find the resistance because her parents were killed because they were the leaders of the resistance. So she goes to find the resistance and ask them for help to get her brother back. And this is a Roman-inspired empire, so it's very brutal, and they're like, if you do something for us, we'll get your brother out. So she goes into this academy called Blackcliff Academy, where they train masks, which are like the highest ranking, most dangerous assassins that work for the Empire. And she is going to be the slave of the commandant, who is basically like the headmaster of this academy. And our other character Elias is actually the son of the commandant, and he hates being a mask. He's being trained there. He's very looked down upon and very like suspicious to everybody at Blackcliff because he doesn't want to be a mask, and it's very apparent, and he hates the Empire and the way that they treat people. And we follow their 2 paths meeting, and this series is so freaking good. Like, the character development throughout these books is astronomical. Like, the characters in the first book versus the characters in the third book are very different people, and I love that so much. Like, Sabaa Tahir really does not play. She will rip your heart in two, but she is a master at writing and character development, and the series means so much to me just because it is a read along that I've been doing with my friends, and it's been so much fun, and I just love like my whole experience with this series. Can't wait to get to the last one. I know for a fact it's going to rip out my heart. I've heard a lot about it, and I'm preparing myself. I don't think I'll ever be fully prepared, but I'm trying. And again, I will have all the information for our Ember Along link down below if you want to join us for that live show. So those are all my favorites of 2020. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm a little bit delirious because I'm so tired, but I had so much fun filming this video because I got to talk about all my favorites, and I'm just really happy with how my reading went in 2020, and there will be like a stats video coming up in general, and I just had a lot of books that I love that are new favorites of all time, if not that, at least favorites in their genres. So like some of my favorite thrillers, horror, whatever, and I just had a really amazing reading year, and I hope you guys did as well, and I can't wait to see how my 2021 reading is going to be. But that's all that I have for this video today, and I will see you guys on my next one. Bye!
You always posting up pictures, trying to look like you winning. I'm writing rhymes in the kitchen, soaking in moments we live in, yeah. You got the nerve to be on me, faking your life for the IG. If you got my number, don't ask.